All the things she said, running through my head. All the things she said, this is not enough. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, the podcast where Matt and Todd go see a movie at our local Regal cinema. And then for this one in particular, we re-record it because we had issues with the first recording. So here we are a second time. And hopefully it gets to you and you can make a decision on whether or not you should see this particular movie. And hopefully we've helped you. I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy. And yes, we are re-recording a podcast, which we hate to do. But we listened to the first recording and it was not up to the technical standards, the high technical standards that we hold ourselves to.
It's pretty bad if it can't meet our technical standards.
So we had an issue with wind sort of wiping out some of the audio in parts of our podcast. So we're here again, and we will talk again about the movie Black Widow, a Marvel movie and part of the MCU. And Todd, do you want to explain your musical intro to this podcast? You were confused the first time I did it too, and I thought about changing it, but I was like, you know what? We're just going to stick with it. We're going to do it again. So that was the famous song, I believe it's called All the Things She Said. Yeah.
By Tattoo.
Yes, Tattoo.
I think it was like early 2000s of like this Russian lesbian couple, like pop singers and stuff like that. For some reason, it caught the world by storm for a hot second with that song.
Yep, I remember that.
So there's a lot of Russians in this movie.
Yes.
So that was my connection.
Or at least people pretending to be Russians.
Very much so.
Great.
Yeah, I wonder how many actual Russian people were in this movie. Probably not a lot.
I'm guessing a low number.
Yeah.
There was a lot of locations mentioned in the credits of this movie, but I don't think that Russia was one of them.
Okay.
Okay.
Probably a lot of Vancouver, which is where a lot of films are done.
Gosh darn it.
Oh, man. Nice.
So, for the second consecutive podcast that we've recorded, I pressed the button to open the back hatch of the Honda Pilot that we're in. So, sorry about that, fans. But we will march on. So, we've got a few famous people in this movie. We've got the main star, Scarlett Johansson, who is the Black Widow of Marvel fame. And then we've got a few other notables in the movie. One of them is Florence Pugh, who we can recall from being in Little Women, was her kind of breakout role.
Yes.
And then we have David Harbour, who is somewhat famous from being the sheriff in Stranger Things.
Mr. Stranger Things.
Yes. And then, who else? Who am I?
Rachel Weisz.
Rachel Weisz, yes.
She was from the Mummy movies.
Right.
The Brendan Fraser ones. And she's married to Daniel Craig, I think.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Well, good for her and good for him.
Yeah.
They're lucky people to be married to each other, I guess. Anyone else?
The guy who is like the main baddie has been in some stuff, but not. I wouldn't say he's like super famous. People might recognize him.
Right.
Yeah, and that's really about it. Like it has been a little bit of time since it's been in the movie at this point, and I guess we could pull it up on IMDb, but no, we're here.
We're here.
So,
we're doing it.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Certainly, we mentioned all the people that we're going to come see the movie for.
Right.
If we missed anyone, then whatever.
Yeah.
It's your fault, the listener.
Okay. We blame our listeners.
Yep.
Okay, so what's this movie about? Well, this movie explores the character of Black Widow. You get a little flashback scene at the beginning with her character, with her adoptive family, and the parents of the adoptive family are David Harbour's character and Rachel Weisz's character, and then the sister in the family to Scarlett Johansson's character is Florence Pugh's character. So we've got all those people. So you get this flashback scene that kind of has this this family structure. They're living in Ohio, very normal kind of suburban life, and then something happens and they have to kind of flee, and there's a big chase scene and all this stuff, and they end up not in America anymore.
Cuba. I believe is where they touched down.
Yes, correct. And then kind of the girls get taken from there and put into like this training program for Black Widows is what they're called, I believe.
Yes, the Red Room.
The Red Room.
That's what it's called.
Right. And so that's sort of you get a little bit more with the flashback, but basically that's the important part of the flashback. So then you flash forward, and the time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that this film is inserted is after the events of Captain America: Civil War.
Yes.
So now if you're watching in chronological order, you'll watch that movie, and then you'll watch this movie.
Yes.
And so Black Widow, after that movie, is kind of off on her own, doing her own thing. And she's kind of decided to go into hiding. And then she eventually gets a package from her sister, played by Florence Pugh, who and this package has some kind of information in it that she decides she's going to go find her sister. So she ends up in Thailand, I believe, searching for her sister, and finds her.
Budapest.
Is Budapest
in Thailand? Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is. Budapest.
Well, ADU for geography, man.
That's going to bother me. But maybe I'll look it up when it's your turn to talk. So yeah, she goes there, she finds her sister, and her sister's like, hey, I really want you to help me, like, free these Black Widows, soldier women, who are basically assassins for this organization. They're trained by the Red Room, and they're also, like, I guess, tasked from that same organization. And so she says there's like a mind control thing going on, and we have this antidote. We can free them, and also, just so you know, the Red Room is not destroyed. I know you think you destroyed it, Black Widow, but you did not.
Bum bum bum.
Right, and you did not kill the big bad that you thought you killed. He's still alive and will feature as the big bad of this movie. So they're like, okay, well, I want to stop all the bad stuff. Let's work on this together. And they decide that they're gonna go find their adoptive father, played by David Harbour, who is also a Russian super soldier, kind of in decline, so to speak. I mean, he still has his super soldier strength and some power and stuff like that. But he has been put into prison by the big bad villain from this movie, where he's supposed to spend the rest of his life. It's like I guess it's a Siberian prison or something. But the two women decide they're going to break him out because he probably knows where the Red Room is and can lead them there. So they go and go through that process of breaking him out of prison, and he meets up with them, and he doesn't have any knowledge of where the Red Room is, but he's like, you know who does? Your adoptive mother. Let's go find her, and we'll get her to tell us where it is, and so then you guys can go, we can all go and take it down. So Eventually they find the mother. So now you've got this pseudo family group of people, and eventually they decide that they're gonna go take down the Red Room and get the super bad guy, and so they go and work on that task, and that's kind of the big climax of the movie, is them doing that and kind of infiltrating the Red Room and squaring off against the big bad dude. There's also like this Taskmaster character, who I'm sure Todd will be talking about.
Yep.
Who's kind of like a like the big bad villain is more of a controlling managerial type villain, and then he has this Taskmaster cyborg robot android creature thing that can fight and mimic people when fighting, and is successful in winning a few fights in this movie against the highly trained Black Widows, and also the aging Russian super soldier. What is his name? Red
Guardian.
Red Guardian. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where you lay out the movie, and there's an animal.
Yeah, there's a deer heading towards the movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're trying to see Space Jam 2.
Probably. It's either that or, well, another movie.
Black Widow still in theater.
Black Widow. Yeah. So that's kind of what it's about. Todd, what are your thoughts about this Marvel blockbuster movie?
Right. So I'm going to try to keep with what I originally said, if I can remember everything I said in the first podcast, because it's been a week or close to a week at this point, and I've definitely, my opinions changed and things are reworking as you do and you think about it. So I'm trying to go back to the beginning here and try to remember what I said for our gut reactions, which is what we do here.
Yes.
So there are a couple of ways to approach this movie. I'm torn on what side of me is approaching the movie. They differ in opinion. There's the moviegoer side of me, which is like, this is a blockbuster. It's got good action sequences. It's got some good fight scenes. It's got, I think David Harbour as the Red Guardian is the best part of the movie. Very enjoyable. I wanted more of him all throughout the movie. And then there's a lot of good acting in this movie, but I think Florence Pugh is the best acting in this movie. She's got the most convincing Russian accent. She, honestly, with all these other kind of good actors in it, I think she just really steals the show, in my opinion. I mean, entertainment-wise, the Red Guardian steals the show, but acting-wise and all that kind of stuff, she really kind of, in my opinion, puts everyone else in their place in this movie. She kind of really hit a home run. There's great cinematography, everything you expect from a Marvel movie at this point. As a moviegoer, standalone movie, those are great things about the movie. Some of the cons of this movie, as just a moviegoer, is that and this is me, I don't know if anyone agrees with me on stuff like this. I don't like when they try to, we've talked about it a lot, because there's been a lot of movies we've watched recently where it's like shoehorning something into the past to make this more of a complete story and stuff like that. So for me, I liked not knowing everything there is to know about Black Widow. You didn't need to know it. It worked. You got let enough. You knew enough. And going back into this whole past story and then this whole gap between movies and stuff like that, trying to fit it in the exact time where people look visibly older than in Civil War and stuff like that, it's all a waste to me. Like, I don't like that stuff. Like, if you can't make it perfect and fit like a glove, then don't do it. And I don't know if this necessarily fits like a glove. Like, where this fits in the Marvel timeline. Here we are, another shadow organization that no other person on Earth knows about. Like, how many have we had so far in the Marvel universe of these? And I'm like, they all can't be hidden. Like, someone has to know about them. Like, but it's like every other movie is some big organization coming to light and stuff like that. And if you want that kind of stuff, that's kind of why you go see a Bond movie, not a Marvel movie, in my opinion, at this point. But so that's the movie kind of side of everything. The comic book lover side of this really dislikes this movie. It just really, a lot of it just stems from Taskmaster. If you're a fan of Taskmaster in comics, you're not going to be a fan of the character in this movie, because they don't do anything justice to the character. They kind of just destroy the character's backstory and just kind of create their own thing. And it's honestly, I feel like Marvel's moving in this direction of like, okay, we're getting farther and farther from source material because we're established and we can do what we want to do. And that, I don't know, that bothers me. But I don't expect every moviegoer to understand that or really even care about that. But yeah, so it's, a lot of my problems with the movie aren't exactly, it's not like it didn't have good acting or it didn't have good action sequences or good cinematography. It's just like, it almost feels like this movie just didn't need to happen, like in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I guess they wanted to give Scarlett Johansson one last hurrah. I think she's finally done with the character and stuff like that. So, and really, I think the most poignant point I had when we recorded this the first time is that this movie is about 8 years too late. Like, she should have had her own movie, like, way near the beginning, or even if like this is what you want to do, then you should have done it after Civil War. Like, this should have been the follow-up to Civil War. But Marvel needs to take a stance and at least admit where they did wrong. They didn't think a female-led comic book movie could work, so they decided not to do it for the longest time. And now they're kind of treading back on that and stuff like that. And it's like, well, it's a little too late for this character. So it just didn't.
And they were wrong, by the way. They were wrong.
Yes. Oh, absolutely, they were wrong. Yes. I mean, I think the first Marvel comic movie led by a female was Captain Marvel.
Right.
And that did gangbusters.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't the best movie in the world to me, but it still did a ton of money.
Right.
So it's proven that it can work. They just were so late to the game with this character. Like, we've kind of been there. This character has had its arc. The arc was, I don't have a family, but I found my family in the Avengers and stuff like that. And, that was the end of her arc when an Endgame happened and stuff like that. Now you have this kind of who cares movie thrown in and be like, oh, well, I also have an actual family who I consider my family and stuff like that. And it's just all shoehorned in, and it's not... I'm just getting fatigued on that aspect of movie making. I'm throwing in, here's the backstory that you know about, but I'm throwing in way more because of, whatever, i.e. Cruella, the new Fast movie, like all this stuff. It's a trend right now, and I'm getting tired of it. So, that's me, I think. I really can't remember if I didn't touch on something. I mean, there's other stuff that I would love to touch on since I've been thinking about it for a week, but I'm not going to do that. That's not what we do here. I'm trying to keep with my gut reactions, and I think those were that. Matt?
Good. Yeah, I don't remember you saying anything else when I listened to the podcast or when we recorded it. But, yeah, so I think I had less of a problem with you with
me. Oh,
I have less of a problem with you, Todd, than I used to have, or than I normally have. No, what I meant to say was I didn't have the same problem that you did with the shoehorning it in.
Sure.
I was able to kind of just say, hey, this is a movie about Black Widow, and it doesn't really matter too much where it falls in the timeline. I'm happy to see, the female-driven characters of this movie. Not only Scarlett Johansson's character, but Florence Pugh, I will agree, did a great job in this movie.
Yeah.
Special shout out to her holding her Russian accent for the entire movie.
Yes.
Not everyone did that in this movie, and
Yes.
she did good. So, but I thought that it was a decent example of a kind of a spy action thriller type movie. You don't have a lot of huge power, kind of superpowers play their role.
Yeah.
David Harbour's character, the Red Guardian, does have some super strength and some ability to kind of do some agility things that are past what a normal human can do. But everything else is supposedly based on training and that kind of stuff. So yeah, less superhero movie, more of a spy thriller
Yes.
type movie. Action too. I thought that the action sequences in this were pretty good. One sequence in particular where there's a fight that takes place in free fall with a whole bunch of debris flowing around the people who are fighting. I especially thought that was a nice piece of movie making magic that looked really realistic and was well crafted from a special effects perspective. Which leads me to something that I just remembered that you did talk about, Todd, which was Black Widow's ability to recover from injury.
Yes, yeah, I was just thinking about that while you were talking, and I was like, man, that was probably one of my strongest points that I disliked about this movie.
Yep. So, if you want to talk about it now, you're free to.
I'm only going to mention the one, like, there's a couple of scenes that are like, how in the world does this person is not a cripple at this point? But there's one specific that I'm like, this was way too much, where she basically falls off a roof and hits everything she possibly can on the way down. Not on purpose. Like, she's just smashing into stuff left and right. And then literally lands on her feet and is 100% okay. While the other woman who was falling off the building too fell to her death. And it was just like, it was way too much. Like, it just... And then, like, in the next scene, they decide to show her that she's got bruises on her and stuff like that. It's like, it just was very inconsistent in that way. I mean, like, you've got one superpowered person in this movie, and you let them shine with the superpoweredness. But then everyone else who's not superpowered, it's better to see them struggle like an actual person, because it makes their character more grounded for you to relate to.
Yep.
And they don't do that at all in this movie. Like, there's, you could argue all day, highly skilled assassin, blah, 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 whatever. The human body can only do so much. And you really, in that aspect, you have to really suspend your disbelief. Like, just really turn that side of you off. And I'm not able to do that at this point. So, back to you.
Fair. Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah. No problem.
By the way, the deer are getting closer to this car.
They are. We're attracting them.
Yeah.
Come here, dear.
They want to know if they should see Black Widow.
Yeah. Well, soon you'll know. So yeah, I thought, like I said, decent example of this genre of movie. I did want more of David Harbour's Red Guardian.
Absolutely.
Just kind of his silly Russian shenanigans.
Yeah. Entertainment-wise, he steals the show. Like,
right.
Just straight up entertainment-wise.
Right. I thought that, like I said, I didn't really care where this fell in the timeline, but they threw a couple nice things in that kind of reminded you of, oh yeah, there's a larger world out there when it comes to MCU. And then there's the post-credits scene, which is, which we talked about. I didn't understand it, and the reason is because I haven't watched The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yes. If you haven't watched that show, you need to watch it to understand the after credit scene in this.
Right.
So,
But basically, they used that scene to kind of set up, I think, another show that's going to come out on Disney Plus in the near future.
yes.
So, a Hawkeye show.
Yeah, I think it will somewhat tie into the Hawkeye show, yes.
Yeah. So, so I would say this was a decent movie, and I would say if you like Marvel movies, you should go see it. And it's probably worth seeing on the big screen if it's still in theaters, which I think it will be. It's doing well in theaters.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's only the second weekend at this point, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, I enjoyed myself. I was able to suspend disbelief, maybe more than you, Todd, but yeah, I thought it was a decent effort for this type of movie. So
Groovy.
Well,
I honestly can't remember what the grading system was the first time we did this. So
well, we'll have a
I'm
new
just
one. It's fine.
Yeah. How many Red Guardian action figures would you give this movie? Red Guardian action figure does come into play in this
That's
movie.
true. Yeah.
So, obviously, 5 being the best because you have the most Red Guardians you could possibly have. 0 being the worst because then you have no Red Guardians. So,
Yes, absolutely true. So, I'm going to, I believe, give it the same score that I gave last time, which was 3.3 Red Guardian action figures out of 5. It wasn't Red Guardian action figures last time, but
it definitely wasn't.
was 3.3.
Yes.
So I'm going to go with that as my score, and I'd say go see this guy because I think it's fun.
Nice. I'm going to go with my original score too, even though, as I was explaining to you, having time to think of it, I do think my score would be lower at this point. Maybe not much, but it would be a little bit lower if I was grading how I feel on it now. But I'm going to revert back to how I felt after we saw the movie, which is I'm going to give it a 2.9. Better than average, I would say. But if you're a comic book fan, it's going to really test your patience with how much they're kind of throwing out the source material at this point. So, at least that's my view. I mean, other comic book fans could have 0 problem with it and just love it. That's fine. You got to live your life. But I got to live my life too.
Yeah.
And here I am saying 2.9.
Well, you are the comic book fan who's on this podcast,
Yeah.
so we'll take your opinion
There we
over
go.
a comic book fan who's not on this podcast,
Yeah,
who
screw
is
them.
living their life and loves this movie.
That person.
So, great. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we review for the second time Black Widow. But this is the only version that you'll hear because the other one is destroyed by too much wind.
Yeah.
But
Our new natural enemy.
yes,
Wind.
Curse you, wind. But we ended up with an average rating of 3.1, which is pretty good for us. And yeah, it's above that sort of 2.5 average line. 3.1 Red Guardian action figures out of 5 is a good score. And we think that probably most people, other than certain hardcore comic book fans,
Action figure
fans and comic book fans may be frustrated a little bit, but overall I think we say go see this one, and we say thank you for listening to our podcast. We will continue to make them.
Wait, I think something also happened in the last 2 weeks that we haven't talked about, which I think we've passed 5,500 downloads.
That's true.
Total downloads,
That
which
did
is
happen.
crazy.
Yeah.
And it's got me thinking, not that, I don't want to do this, but I'm curious to know how many below 2.5s we have and how many above 2.5s we have. Of what are we up to now? Maybe like 180 podcasts? At this
Something.
point? Yeah.
Something.
But
You
yeah,
have to look at the
that's just a
numbers.
side thought I came up with. But the 5,500, that's a milestone.
That is a milestone.
Celebrate.
So yes.
Thank you, listeners, for that.
That's my celebratory mouth trumpet.
Hand horn.
Yes. Yeah, so 5,500 downloads. Thank you very much for that, listeners and subscribers to our podcast. And we'll keep on making them. And we'll see you next time.
Da da da
Da da
da da da.
da da da.